Yeah, this is going to be
Buckle
fun.
up, this is going to be a long one.
So, um, a very calm, not hyperactive Danny is going to explain roughly what we're going to talk about. Yeah, no, I'm buzzing. This is cool. Um, so thing one, which is, I mean, it's the fun bit, but also not so fun, is we're going to go through the comments of the last couple of episodes. So, for those unaware, I was away last week, so we did two recordings in one sitting, which was great fun. My holiday was
It
good.
was. It was great fun. Come on.
Yeah, my holiday was good. And feel refreshed, etc., etc. But I'm so happy I'm actually doing something now. I can't sit still. I was a fidget ass. Like the first couple of days, did walks and stuff, and then I was like, nah, I can't sit by the pool and do nothing. Nothing. I need to move. So yeah, holiday was good, but we recorded two episodes, so we've got two episodes worth of comments, which is good. We'll go through a couple of them. Then Cron is now accessible to everyone. So I've done a bit of exploring on that, and much to my disgust, John got an update for Illicit, which I don't have yet, so he can discuss Illicit. Uh, yes, I am doing my ranty thing inside of the Slack, and I want it. So yeah, we're going to
Oh,
discuss.
you see, you're doing your anti thing.
Yep. I've gone.
You got it first. You were playing with the list before I was. It's
I
great.
know, and I use it more than you do. Um,
Pretty much.
but yeah, so we're going to talk about a couple of tech apps, then go off maybe in some other directions. We'll see how the time goes because I don't want to give you like a 3 hour episode. So
You don't?
no, I'd much rather have lunch. I have another
Sorry, we
meeting today.
started half an hour early, so we're fine.
Exactly. I was like, okay, I have a lot to say already. John, you're probably going to have a lot to say. So we need to start.
Yep.
Which episode do you want to start with? I don't remember which one was first. I think Stream of Consciousness came out first.
Mm-hmm.
So, John, you have more points.
I don't. I just have put notes down on my points rather than just having like a bullet.
Oh,
I like.
you know me with my a couple of words. Here's like an hour of a conversation.
Yeah, I know that if I don't put more than a couple of words, I will be there. I will be 3 4 hours going in different directions. I'm like, nope. I want to get capture my thoughts and then explore them. Yes. So I assume you want me to start again.
Well, I mean, I can start because my point literally says Atomic Notes don't get it.
Yeah.
That's the 5 words that I got from Dovas's comment. The comment was much longer than that, but that's the general gist of it. And John has gone on to give it 3 bullet points each with a sentence.
Yeah. I mean, I also don't get it. I don't get atomic notes. I don't like. Well, I get it in theory, and for me,
I think this is where for me terminology comes in. I understand it from a different person's perspective, but I
yes.
don't understand it in my personal use case.
Mhm.
That's how I would explain it.
That's exactly how I would explain it. And I put in here that for me, a lot of what gets spoken about is a little bit of like navel gazing kind of experience of like, let us talk about the taxonomies and philosophies and which is something we're also quite bad at doing. But I know I know what, but it's very much impractical. It's talking about it from an impractical sense, not from a sense of how we discuss it, where it feels, at least for me, let us know if you disagree, but it's from a very practical action based experience, like the doing of the things that the theoretical parts are always talking about. When you think about Zettelkasten and information and all of the stupid atomic notes stuff, I like dense information. I think we both are very much enjoying like everything being in one page with the context there because that makes sense. Like I don't get atomic notes, and in fact, I my hot take is atomic notes is just it's a way so that you look like you have more notes. Like it's like, oh, I've got 10,000 notes, yes, but most of them have less than a paragraph in them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Dovos left a comment. Bear with me. He left a comment on my video, um, and the comment was essentially saying the original comment was essentially saying they're enjoying my channel because they can see me using Obsidian. And I think that's the difference between the videos that I'm making and some of the other videos, where other videos, I'm not saying all of them, I'm just saying a lot of them show you a feature, or talk about a thing, but they don't really say why or how. And I mean, I think it might have been the recent video on bookmarks. I showed how I'm using bookmarks and why I'm not using parts of the bookmarks. It's like it's putting the theory into practice. And I see Atomic Notes kind of like that. Is I don't see many people that use Atomic Notes actually do anything with them, because the emails that they put out, the newsletters, the essays, are long notes. They're long files that are written. Those people that are writing books have long files. A character file is not a sentence. They may have a sentence at the top explaining what the character is, but you have an entire file about a character or about a place or about a bit of magic or tech or whatever they're writing. It's, yes, I know, it's fun. It's more.
I know, DD, I freaking know.
It's more than a couple of paragraphs.
Yeah.
And I don't see how Atomic Notes actually transfers to writing. And Obsidian is a writing app.
Yeah.
I don't see where it is. Zettelkasten, you can argue, Zettelkasten is just a slip box, a place where you put your notes. To me, Zettelkasten is a place to put notes. It's not an Atomic Note thing.
No.
Because when you look at the translations, Zettelkasten is just like slipbox, and a slipbox, it can be as big or as small as you want because digital. Like digital is the thing.
It kind of goes into one of my other points on this. Like there is so much on the internet
around distortion.
Yeah, there is so much distortion around the internet of like, this is how you do it, this is what you do, this is why you do it. And then when you look at it and you go, but why? It kind of falls apart. A good example of this, from like every single thing that someone says on the internet may have some value. It's not rubbish and crap and junk, to clarify, because that would be a common misconception that I had at the beginning when we started having these conversations. It's the fact that it all goes down to the environment that you're in. For example, time blocking, didn't get it for literally forever. Never got it, thought it was stupid, thought it was rubbish, didn't make sense to me. And then I needed time blocking. But what people don't seem to talk about is that environmental element, because it's nowhere near as easy to talk about and isn't so fancy and swishy. Well, I think it's fancy. I freaking love it. But no one
I can tell the first thing you look at in a list is ED.
Well, duh. Because I did it in ChatGPT and I cry every single time going, no. It's better though. Better. Still elicits better.
Nice. Yeah, I can relate to what you were saying as well, because recently with some of the stuff that I've been writing, outlining makes sense because of the environment I'm in. I'm not doing heavy research, and when I'm doing heavy research, outlining just doesn't make sense. And when I'm writing articles, again, outlining just doesn't make sense, which is what I spent most of my writing time doing. But now that I'm doing a different style of writing, outlining helps. It just helps. And because I know how to do it, it wasn't how do I do this thing? It was like, I can do this now.
It's that thing like with habits. Like, I think I've mentioned this a few times before, around how if I want to learn a habit or I want to get a habit, I want that habit to be very much multi-use, versus getting into a habit of pressing a button so that I can start a timer so that I keep track of my time. I would rather develop a habit that actually helps me do multiple things, and like that outlining idea and all of that lovely thing that you were saying is kind of an example of that for me. Of like, I want to build habits, not in the his way of thinking about habits, but the other book, which thanks for mentioning that in the comments. I think I actually own that book. I haven't finished it yet.
Well, the Atomic Habits one or the other one?
Oh, fuck Atomic Habits. I've read enough of Atomic Habits to burn it.
Oh, dog, of course. Yeah, I think there was I'm gonna mute myself while the dog does her barking thing, and then you can carry on. So I was just going to allude. Oh no, she seems to have been quiet. Yeah, there we go. I was just going to allude to like the way that we think about each context, each environment. Um, where you were talking about your habits, the habit is so constrained. It's
Hmm.
like learning a skill for just that one specific environment. And as
Mm.
soon as something changes in the environment, the skill decays.
And this is something that, from my understanding, and I've only watched that video that you linked to in the comments from the academic ADHD. That's exactly what the other book talks about, which is just doesn't.
Mhm.
It's too busy to talk about the identity and how your identity matters. And if you want it hard enough, you'll go and get it, which is the problem because the moment you put in any form of environmental context, because that is actually the reality of what we live in, we are in different environments all of the darn time. But oh, God forbid we actually talk about that so that people can actually get what they need and what they want from what they're doing. But anyway, rant.
I
Like,
think I think that's an affordance because it's an affordance slash constraint inside of the self-help book world field thing. Because when you look at the majority of the self-help style books, it's someone telling their story, which immediately adds constraints because it's their story. And immediately the affordances they see are mapped to their environment. That's how ecological psychology works. That's how the perception works. You perceive affordances in your environment. But if the person reading the book isn't in that environment, they may
yeah.
not perceive the same affordances, solutions. Therefore, the tips, tricks, hacks, affordances don't work for them because it's a different environment. So you'd need to write the book in a way that isn't constrained by an individual's story, which is
Yeah, so this
why.
is yeah,
Yeah.
this is something that I've been like the recent workshop I ran around redefining simplicity. I was exceptionally like aware around like this is based on my experience, and I'm now that I've kind of lived the experience and had the lived experience of using kind of dynamical systems, ecological like the whole theory.
The
I'm
ecological
now bring
perspective.
Yeah, the ecological perspective. I'm now bringing that in, but being also super aware of the fact that this is just my experience with my environment. And so it's been quite interesting to translate that
Mm.
into into a different environment, as in a learning environment, to help people figure out how to redefine simplicity. And having the specific topic as the constraint seems to have worked pretty well. It helped me to focus my attention down further and constrain the environment
Yeah.
because it's the constraints led approach to coaching. And that in that idea, I know, right? I
Look
know,
at that.
right?
All the stops.
Yeah. Um, I'll just throw some other jargony words in there to sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but you're using them in the right place, though. That's the
I know,
thing.
I didn't know they were the right words in the right places. But it's interesting now I've slowly started to understand more of the theory and the lived experience of that theory, which is the part that has always been missing for me. Well, it's not been missing. I've just not been aware of it, and I've not attuned to it. That's what it is. That's the reality of it. I haven't been attuned to that because I've been thinking different and had different constraints on what I thought I could and couldn't do, and so that shaped the environment that I'm in. But now that I've attuned to the environment and the changing environment and everything that happens from there, the emergence, entropy, all of the lovely, lovely nerdy words, which
Insert
I
all
put in the
words I
right
can think of
context.
right now.
Huh?
I said insert all words I can think of right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think I primarily focused on emergence and perception and action because they were the two that are kind of, when I first started, they were the ones I could grasp
They're concepts,
relatively
by the
well.
way. For those listening,
Concepts.
may have got confused because you said the words and then you listed three words and then you said two.
Yeah. So the concepts, thank you.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I completely agree, and this is where I think I guess we can merge this into the next point. I think this is where the way you perceive the environment with action, i.e.,
I
having
I love that. I didn't realize I did that, but yep.
Having the ecological perspective, moving into different things, the teachers don't care enough to keep students engaged. I think that is a perception on what the teacher's constraints are in an environment, because Dovos made a really good point, and I completely agree with them. That a lot of teachers, they give you a lot of upfront work, but keeping all the students engaged is very, very difficult, and most teachers fail at it. And I think that's partly because of the system, and the system is really, really poor, especially in the world we're living in now with AI, tech, everything. It's just a really poor system which needs to change, and it's needed to change for years. But because the teachers have constraints in the environment that prevent some of the affordances they want to do, some of the things that the teachers want to do, they can't do because of either the system, the students, the people. Like, there are lots of different things in there that's stopping the teacher doing from what they want to do, that the students lose out on that, which is why I think a lot of students, they don't necessarily don't need to go to university or go to formal education, but they could certainly do a lot of it in their own time if they understood the differences in the environments that they're working in. Like, when I was a student, telling my story a little bit, so obviously it's constrained, but going through, oh wow, I did not like that. Cron, go away. Did you hear that? No. Okay, good. Cron gave me a ping notification for the meeting, even though I'm already in the meeting. Ugh. Where was I? Oh yeah. So when I was at university, started university, my view was the traditional view. It's the traditional IP view, going through learning, etc., very linear. And I struggled so hard to understand what was going on. I critiqued myself a lot, very heavily. And it wasn't until I grasped what environments meant, what constraints meant, what affordances were, when it came to coaching other people, that I realized, actually, you know what? It's not actually bad that I'm different. It's actually a good thing that I'm different. And it's actually normal that I'm different. Even though I was told when I was younger, like, I was always told, oh, everyone's unique. Everyone's got their unique thing. I'm like, yeah, but that's not what everyone does. It's not what I actually see in the world. Like, you tell me this stuff, but I don't believe it, because that's not what you're saying. Everyone's grouped together. Everyone's categorized together. Everyone's labeled in that way. Everyone's treated in this way. Everyone should do this. Everyone should act like that. That doesn't tell me that I'm unique or should be unique. And then I realized, like, second year uni, I'm like, what am I, like 19, 20 at this point? Oh, wait, everyone is different. There is an environment that allows for constraints, affordances, etc., etc. Like, oh, okay. If I knew that earlier, I don't think I would have needed to go through university, because I would be able to do what I'm doing now, which is learn by myself. Some people figure it out on their own, and they don't know it's ecological psychology. They just figure it out. Like, when you look at some of the successful stories of entrepreneurs that did drop out of college or whatever, they realize that it's the environment and the environment they put themselves in that helps them progress and move forward.
I see that a lot. And it's kind of,
they don't know it's ecological psychology, but it is.
Yeah, I see that quite a bit in the space, and primarily in people who identify as neurodivergent or neurodiverse or whatever the language is. But with that label, there are more people who go, well, I just realized that this didn't work for me because of the situation I'm in. And situation is often the phrase used. It's like, that's environment. Yeah, different constraints. Yeah, how do you do this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go look at this, because if you look at this, I think your brain is going to explode and you are going to unlock quite a bit. Because that's the exciting thing for me, I think, is that was my lived experience of, like, I knew this stuff because I sort of lived it to a degree, but it was very constrained by the environment that I was in at the time, and that, like, I didn't know what was available to me. I was not attuned to what was available. And because of that, the constraints I had kept me in a different position that meant I couldn't see what was there, couldn't see the different things in the environment that were there. And what happened once we started talking about this and I started researching and started going, oh, cool, that's interesting. Oh, cool, that's interesting. Oh. Well, I'm full of shit, time to live it. And it was very much that, oh, well, I'm full of shit, time to live it. And going through that experience of trying to live what do you call it? What was that? What was the sexy name you had for it? My brain is like trying to find it now.
I don't even know what you're trying to
Ecological
explain.
learner. Like,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I knew it was there. Um, when I got to that position of being an ecological practitioner or learner or whatever it might be, ecological practitioner sounds kind of cool. Um, it was very much a thing of like, oh, this changes nothing and also everything at the same time.
I think the way I see it is the ecological perspective is what, in my mind, is a true mindset shift. When people speak about I need to shift my mindset or I need to change my mindset, I don't see anyone really changing their mindset. They don't change their values, their morals, their beliefs. They don't really interpret things in a different way. They're still viewing things in a similar lens. It's I guess using the matrix pill because everyone loves using that analogy. They they look at the red pill and the blue pill and they think they're taking the red pill, but actually it's just another blue pill. Like
Yeah.
they're just taking the same pill, but they don't realize it. Um, that's how I felt whenever I went to a mindset shift. I'm like, oh, I'm going to change my mindset. I must have changed my mindset so much in my first year at uni because I was really struggling, like with lots of issues. And I was like, I'm going to change my mindset again, and I'm going to, yeah, it never made a thing. And I didn't when I went into ED, I didn't think I'm going to change my mindset. That wasn't the
No.
approach I took. I'm like, I don't understand this, but this is giving me some answers to questions. Wait, I have more questions about what I think now because this is giving me answers to things that I didn't even realize were an issue right like beforehand. And having read the first few chapters of the Introduction to Ecological Psychology book, the assumptions that I knew were challenged, when you actually list them out, and you list the traditional approach assumptions out when it comes to perception, you sit there and go, yeah, that's actually kind of dumb.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of dumb. But it's the best that we have and had, past tense, future tense, present tense. When it comes to perception, because perception is very difficult to explain. Some academics even use, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but they even say, some academics, that perception can't be explained through science and it is an existential solution. Like you need a god of some sort to explain perception to you because it's so difficult to explain. And that's some academics talking about that. And I'm sitting here thinking, but we have things that are perceiving other things. I say things because you've got like technology, AI that's looking at a world and perceiving things, but the perception is different from technology to an organism. I say organism because I think insects are involved in that as well, ecological psychology, etc., etc. Do you want to riff about the second point of Davos with teachers? I said what I wanted to say with regards to the environment of teaching being very constrained by the system.
Yeah, I mean, I had pretty much, as you can see, I had the kind of same thing, but I did. Is one of the things that was mentioned, which drew my attention, was the foundation of the learning path. Like, is there a foundation? Was my kind of instant question of like, is there, are there things you must know?
I would rephrase that because having must and no in the
Yeah, I
same
know
sentence
that
is a
that was
bit.
like, because that was the question I had, is like, what is a foundation of learning? Like, what is that? Because that and I wasn't really like,
The way I interpreted that was foundation being beginning. I I think this is where a lot of the analogies of the traditional approach start to cloud people's minds. I don't know whether this is what Douglas was meaning as an interpretation, but foundation typically is the bottom of a pyramid and you build on top of it.
that's what I interpreted, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
ah.
I don't think that's well, that's not how I read it, but then again, that's my that's my perspective speaking. I see foundation as a starting point, as a point in a three-dimensional universe. where you can go in every and any direction. So
Yeah, because that was
I'm not
my,
constrained by the way my mind tries to model out the word.
yeah, and my own personal interpretation kind of matches yours of like it but I my brain went, is that what you're meaning, or is that so kind of had the two differing views playing at the same time because I like to do that in my head.
Oh yeah, I do the same. It's just I choose to focus on my personal perspective rather than understand the viewpoint from the other perspective, because I know as soon as I go on to a different like the traditional approach of IP, and the traditional linear learning elements, I get bogged down in the same struggles I had when I was struggling, because there were questions that processing just doesn't do it for me. Saying, "Oh, the brain
Mm.
processes it," or
Yeah, and that was
"Oh,
where my brain,
you need to do some thinking." I'm like, what thinking? What the do we
yeah,
need
and
to
how does
do?
that even work? How do you think, like, what do you like, what does that even flipping mean?
Yeah. Oh, ask yourself some journal prompts and you'll get the solution. No, you won't. You'll answer the journal prompts in the easiest way you see, or you'll go down loads of rabbit holes, explore loads of things, come up with loads of questions, and end up going in a completely different direction because you don't really have an answer to what processing the whatever it is, trauma, struggles, issues is. There's no solution. Psychologists, therapists, they all know it. They can't just go, right, do this bit of thinking and you'll solve whatever your problem is. No, no, it doesn't work like that. You've got to practice. You've got to do the thing, and practice, in a nutshell, is perceiving and acting inside of an environment. That is
Yeah.
practice explained through an ED lens,
Yeah,
which
and I think going back to what you were saying about like a good slash bad teacher, I actually have a really good example in my own experience when I was in college of around. I had a teacher who everyone hated, like almost everyone absolutely hated. They didn't think they were a good teacher. They thought they were awful, and yet I enjoyed every single lesson.
I have the same experience.
And I'm like, does that mean that that teacher was bad, or does that mean that the environment that he created didn't match the environment of the students
I would say it didn't match the expectations the
or the
students put on.
expectations?
Yeah, they put on that experience. I think moving on to something some of the academic ADHD comments, because I can see that obviously Obsidian split screened. I think this relates to what Attila commented on the All the Things episode with memorizing and learning. I, in my head, link those two things together because inside of a lesson you have expectations, and when you think of, okay, I'm going to go into this lesson to learn something, or I'm going to go into this lesson and I'm going to remember, or I'm going to store these things in my memory from this lesson because it's an important piece of information for the test or whatever. Some people go in with a narrative in their head that I'm going to learn this thing so I can remember this thing for the test, and when you go in with that, you're constraining the way that you perceive the world, obviously, because you're looking at it through a certain lens, which means the affordances of all of the information being shared aren't always there because obviously you constrain the environment, i.e., the mental environment looking at the lesson. Uh, and so when a different student goes into that environment and they don't care about the test, they're not constraining their attention to, is this on the test, or how do I remember this for the test, or do I need this for the assessment? Instead of that being the constraint, that's removed because the person doesn't care about the test and they care about learning. And now when they hear the words, it's the same words in the same environment, but they have a different personal constraint due to expectations. They have different questions and they see different ways to explore that information because of the different perspectives that people have taken into that environment. And that is how, for me, I never took notes at university. I got kicked out of a couple of lectures for not taking notes because the lecturer was like, you can't remember all of this, blah, blah. I don't give a I don't care about remembering it for the test. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to learn. Which is why I was actually able to remember most of it, because I cared about the information being shared. But I went in with a different view, and I went in looking to see all of the information and see how it connects. And that's how I think. Again, I'm speaking from my own experience here. That's how I think neurodiverse, categorized people tend to look at the world. They don't tend to look at the world in a very narrow, constrained, shallow way, because they want to explore. They want to go in every direction at once. And in order to do that, you can't constrain your viewpoint, which means they get distracted because their brain is going everywhere.
Yeah.
So I don't think that is, from my research, I don't think that is something unique to the neurodiverse. I think it's something everyone can do. I think it's something some people choose not to do, and that's a decision that they've made, and they continually make, and then it becomes part of practice, part of who they are, etc., etc. Getting all complicated.
And also from the science, which is, I say that very delicately, not 100% happy with, but it is very much for a neurodiverse individual. It's the lack or struggle to switch off the stimulus of that, like whatever is stimulating them, it requires conscious effort to switch it off. And from my actual lived experience, it's a flipping pain in the ass, and it requires a lot of energy to switch off a stimulus. I have to really focus in. Whereas, and I think what happens, the difference is, or my understanding of the difference is that for those who are not neurodiverse, they don't have that struggle, that they can immediately switch it off. And I'm just like, wow.
See, that to me right there is one of the biggest assumptions in the ADHD popular internet thing. And what I don't understand is where that assumption comes from. Because when you look at the research, when it comes to focus, everyone struggles. Everyone.
Depending on the environment.
Exactly. Every single person struggles to focus, because if someone doesn't care about something, they won't be able to focus on it. So when it comes to the levels of focus and the difficulty someone has on focusing on something, I don't think it comes down to the neurodiversity of someone's brain. I think it comes down to the environment that that person is in, with the way that they are looking at something, because I can see in multiple examples in my life where someone that had ADHD was super hyper focused on a thing, and other neurotypicals weren't focused on that thing. And they put that down to their hyperfocus. I would put that down to interest. Like, the neurotypicals didn't care about this thing, but the neurodiverse person did. And another neurotypical also did care, but they were also focused just as much as the person that was neurodiverse. And like, there's no pattern there. It to me, it doesn't make sense to explain it like that. It makes more sense to explain it through constraints, affordances, and an environment, because it maps to everything, every experience. There's no outlier. There's no, well, it works here, but not quite there. Oh, dog, shut up. It works here, but not quite there. And that's the problem for me with the traditional approach, is there are too many situations where it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The other comment from the academic ADHD was retesting. So Dovos is retesting different things. They're going back to apps and stuff, and I think this is a really good segue into sort of retesting Morgan, retesting Cron. But I can see you've got in the Obsidian FOMO.
Yes. Yeah, they mentioned that it was a big problem around how everyone's showing big systems and Notion, and it kind of links back to my previous comment on that stream of consciousness episode of around, like, it's a strategy, not the only way, but it's often portrayed, due to marketing, sales, etc., as the only way. and the best way, because that's a constraint that's added to marketing to get people in the door, because getting people in the door is the important thing. And so and it kind of links to the business, like how the business environment currently is, of like, yeah, it just it very much links to what my experience has been of business, of like, these are the ways you run a business, these are the courses that you take, these are the books that you read, because these books will give you all of the answers. But when they don't give you all of the answers, you feel like it's something that you're doing wrong.
What happened to your accent? You
What?
said answers and then answers.
I don't know.
You sounded like me.
Okay.
Every time I hear you say answers, I'm like, oh, like it's like a dagger in my brain. I'm like, nope, ignore it. But you said
Good. Yeah.
answers. Oh, anyway, carry
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. So those answers
Answers.
don't really provide any answers.
Yeah, I knew you were going to do that as soon as I said it. But I was like,
Yeah,
I
I
had
mean,
to.
you walk straight into it. I mean, I have to take advantage of that. That is how
I
I
know.
answer your thought. I'll stop now. But yeah,
You have no idea what you're talking about now.
I do.
Oh
That's
yeah.
why I put the notes down. See, that's why I do it, because it prompts my brain. Um, and that right there of like the whole PKM space, and I think one of the reasons why we sort of, at least my own reason why we changed it from Notion Nerds to PKM Podcast, is because for me, I wanted to bring in like that ecological perspective, which I didn't realize it was the ecological perspective at the time,
Yeah.
into the PKM space, because all it is everyone's just telling people how they should make their notes, and very rarely does any of the stuff actually help until you understand the environment, which I didn't realize at the time that you were in. And so I think that there of like retesting and trying to find the right answer, I was like, okay, cool. Um, Whereas for me, like that idea of emerging, of the ideas coming out as we go, with what my experience has been recently with my systems, of like pulling that out slowly versus trying to get the right system from scratch, or buying a big system up front in Obsidian or Notion or all the other tools. It takes it away.
Mm. I'm curious. We have a mutual friend that likes purple that's recently been exploring Obsidian. I've seen them on
Yeah,
Twitter.
yep. I did notice.
Yes. And I can see they've gone like heavy on the deep end with the community plugins to start with, which I think a lot of people do. And I'm curious how you would approach helping people like them when it comes to joining other tools and big systems, because the way I see it is they need to find out what works and what doesn't work. So I would kind of encourage them to test it all out and be like, now this sucks, now this sucks. Oh, this is kind of working at the moment. Oh, wait, no, this really doesn't work now. I would want them to go through that pain, but I know a lot of people don't want to go through the pain.
I think it's a matter of I would probably follow a similar approach. I think I would constrain it a little bit more, especially from a business perspective. If
Obviously, it
I was
depends what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's from a business perspective, I would add heavier constraints of like, okay, just start here. This is the focus. This is what you're using it for. And then inside of that, they play in that pain, because it is going to be painful. Because if it isn't, then
You're not learning.
there's no learning there. There's nothing new. Which is what I think a lot of what I want to do is kind of helping people get in a box and play in a box, giving them more options. And I've been recently looking at building a course that kind of follows that, like a program like that is very much giving them that space to play. And I think I might have found a platform that could actually do it far easier than me having to build it all myself, which
Sounds
is
good.
good. Yeah. So
Sounds
we've
good.
got that
Right.
on that.
So now onto the tech. Do you want to go with Illicit first?
Oh, you can go. You can go with Cron first. I'm kind of intrigued.
That's why I wanted you to do Illicit first. Okay. So essentially, for those unfamiliar that are joining the conversation now, I've been using Morgan for almost a year now. It's like a year, and I think next month is my anniversary. And Morgan also just, I say just like 2 days ago or 3 days ago, released their command palette, which is lovely. So Morgan is doing my task management, my project management, and my quick notes, uh, all inside of Morgan. I don't do anything outside of that app, apart from my writing, which is in Obsidian. Like all the writing stuff, the actual content itself, like well, some of the outlines are actually in Morgan as well. The big writing tasks that is in Obsidian, and the bundle of ideas and things that's also in Obsidian. But everything else is in Morgan. And Cron recently released its full to everyone release version. Um, and straight out of the bat, there are things I don't like, which I'm going to go through first because they're just easy things. You can only use Google Calendar. There's no other calendars that you can put in there. So Linux goodbye, Outlook goodbye. Yeah, um, it is on web, which is nice, but the download for Windows, it's basically an app. Like it's like you open up, instead of opening up your browser, you would open up the Cron app. There, whereas Morgan, you can open up a side panel like with a global hotkey. In Cron, all you do is get an agenda list, basically a long list of all your stuff. And it kind of looks like a Windows default menu thing that covers the. It's disgusting. I don't like it. So there's really no difference between the web app and the Cron app. It's the same as Notion. Like you either open up your browser with a tab of Notion, or you open up the desktop, which is just the same thing. And it's the same with Cron. Probably inspired. So even though the desktop app is a desktop app, it still doesn't work without the internet, because you need internet access, and you can't really make it smaller because it just becomes a window. So it's an app, but it's not really an app. So Morgan again wins for me. Cron doesn't have tasks, like at all. Doesn't have tasks. So you can't tick things off or complete things, and it looks like Google Calendar. So all of the tasks that were in Morgan at the moment are showing up as. I'm just going to check my calendar. Is there anything on here that I can't show? No, so I can share it. This one. There is a dark mode, but I don't really like it. So you can see we've got the dark mode here, and this is what I mean. It's got the ticks on it, and that's a task. You can't add tasks inside of Cron at all. I'll go through some of the stuff in a minute. But yeah, so there's that I also am not a big fan of. The scheduling, which you can see I have availability here. I like that the scheduling shows up on the day, and I can click on it and I can see the availability and stuff. But that's the only place I can find the availability. There's no like find availability section. So you can see this is what's upcoming. If I click on share availability, it then gives me an option to share it. I can't go through and look at all of the different slots, whether that's a recurring slot or a single slot. I can't see that. I have to go in and find it. So if, for example, I have a slot in 2 weeks, I have to go 2 weeks into the future and go to that thing. I can't just click on share availability and find it, which is mildly irritating, but I do like being able to see it here. Then in the sidebar, because there are no tasks, it's very clean, which is nice. I like this, but there's no calendar sets, like at all. So I can't hide a calendar, show a calendar easily with a number, because the number is mapped to the days. Like, and this is where I was like, I've put this as a I don't know what to do with Morgan, because Morgan I can go in and push 1, 2, 3, whatever, and it compares. Oh, I'm going to stop sharing because Discord's going to have a mental hissy fit. Yeah, so The 1, 2, 3 inside of Morgan is calendar sets. And then if I want a day view of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it control, and then whatever the numbers are. In Cron, the numbers are the days, and then there's no calendar sets. So the most used features I have for Morgan, tasks, Cron doesn't have it. Global hotkey to show Morgan. There's a global hotkey in Cron, but it shows an agenda, which is disgusting. So I'm going to say it doesn't have it. Calendar sets to filter between different views. Cron doesn't have it. And they are the biggest three features that I use. And then to top that all off, Cron has a mobile app for iOS only. So I can't even use Cron on my phone because I'm an Android user. But those things aside, there are some really nice features. But many of them are niceties. They're not necessary. Like for example, the quick meeting feature. I've got a list inside of the Morgan Discord, going through because it's a suggested thing. So if you want to have a look, go to the Discord. It's Cron inspired features. But there's a button on the all day events that you can show and hide the all day events, which is quite nice. It's just a nicety.
Yeah, that is nice actually. Yeah.
You can select multiple events at once in Cron, which again, it's a nice thing, but I don't know when I would use it. It's one of those features I look at and go, that's cool. When would I do it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure when I would use it. So again, I see it as a nicety. Upcoming event/tasks is shown in the sidebar, which you'll have seen in the screenshot. The top right, it shows the next thing, which again is a nicety, but because I'm always on my day, I can always see what's coming up. So I don't really need it. It's just another thing. The Meet with Quick menu is again one of those features. I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds really cool. And you can use a hotkey to bring up Meet with. You can type someone in, and then it creates a meeting for them. Again with the natural language stuff. But with the command palette inside of Morgan now, I can just create that and mention the person. So again, it's like that's a really cool feature, but Morgan kind of already has it. The day search jump is something that I don't know whether it's coming to Morgan, but it would be good, where you can push a full stop in Cron or comma, can't remember which one, and then you say jump to 7 weeks or the 7th of October or whatever. So you can type out the day you want Cron to jump
nice.
to.
I like that.
Yeah, so that's a nice sort of like keyboard jumping feature, but I think that can be a command that can be added to the Morgan command palette pretty easily because there's already natural language dates in there. You can just say jump to event. So maybe that's a control enter instead of a normal enter of creating an event, something like that. Shareability, I've already said. The month continue to scrolling. So when you're in a month view in Cron, instead of always having to go to the right, you can go to the right and to the left. You can scroll down, which takes you to the next month. So it's like the Notion month view. Again, it's a nicety. I wouldn't say it's a necessity. Easy for me to say. Yeah, it's not needed, but it's nice.
See, that is one of the things I don't like about Morgan is the fact that I have to move it to the next month, I like this the scroll. Yeah. That is one of my favorite features that I miss from Fantastical. And the fact that there is, let me go to the agenda view because I actually quite like the agenda view. Like I do
on my phone.
I do miss the monthly calendar at the top and the fact that past dates faded out, like the color was faded, whereas in this it doesn't fade. That is something that I do miss and might put something in there.
What do you mean by faded out? Because past events can be faded.
Not events, but the days themselves. Sorry.
Oh right, okay.
Like so, when a day is gone, the color is darkened so that you can see the difference. I've constantly had moments where I've clicked on dates and it's not. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, to me it is faded out.
Oh, interesting.
It's not like drastic. Oh, maybe it's because I have an all-day event and it's easier to see. Yeah, it's the all-day events that I'm looking at, not the actual day itself.
Yeah, so when the day has passed, it
still looks like the bright white. I'm using the dark mode.
Yeah, same. Yeah, and I don't like that. I like having
the grayer.
Yeah, the slightly grayed out thing.
Okay, yeah, I know they're revamping the sidebar, so I have a feeling the calendar that's currently in Morgan bottom left, where you click it and it pops up, I have a feeling that's going to be in the new revamped taskbar.
Yes,
Well,
please.
sidebar, because I don't know what they're actually doing to the taskbar. I've seen some screenshots and I've seen some like play around ideas, but I know the command palette's been big on their mind, and there's loads of other. There are so many feature requests inside of the Discord. Like the Morgan Discord is getting hard to manage by myself now. There are lots of things in there, which is great to see. And the developers, because they've got a couple of developers that have been brought on, like they are really pushing the updates, which is great to see. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I celebrated. I
yeah,
celebrated when I opened it and found
they've
that.
also added more confetti. Did you see?
Yeah.
Yes, they added confetti. That's something that Cron just doesn't have at all because there's no tasks. But yeah, and then the other thing. What was the other thing? Oh yeah, the other thing that I had inside of my Cron inspired features was the sidebar calendar highlighting, which again we've just discussed inside of the task, like being able to see what days are being shown. But yeah, there are some nice things in Cron. I personally, when I opened up Cron and was in the light mode, I hated it, did not like it at all. Um, and then when I went over to the dark mode, I still don't like it. Like I use obviously Discord dark mode. I use Obsidian dark mode, Morgan dark mode, and the words are it's too minimal. And because I
Hmm.
can't change anything, it's just it's too minimal.
Yeah.
And I can't do anything about it. Oh, actually, something else that I just thought of. In Cron, you can change the color of an event, but
That's
only to certain colors. You
uh,
don't have the color wheel like Morgan. Like you get red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and gray.
I want my specific color of orange. Thank you.
Exactly. I want to be specifically me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's a lot to like, but there's nothing that Morgan doesn't already have. It's just presented in a different way.
Different way. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Morgan has loads of other things as well. I think the only thing Cron had over Morgan was the command palette, but Morgan released the command palette like the day before Cron released. They're free to everyone, so it's like, yep, whatever, Cron. Moving on.
Oh yeah, the command palette. The command palette. I'm so happy about having that now.
And I've seen as well in the Discord people discussing the recurring features and adding due dates on tasks, and I know they're working on it as well. It's just because Morgan does so much,
Mm.
it's harder to implement just one feature.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're like, oh yeah, I want due dates on a task. How does that impact the recurring tasks? How does that impact the events? How does that impact all of the different platforms that the tasks are going to be shown on and the events are going to be shown on? Because it's not just iOS, Cron, and then a browser app. The thing that annoys me, right, is the videos that I'm seeing. People are saying, "Oh, I'm replacing Fantastica with Cron." What about Windows users? Hello? Or Linux users? Hello? Like, or Android users? Hello? Like, we exist. We don't just need a browser app to work on something. We actually need it working on our computers. It's
I
that.
think that's the thing, isn't it? Because Morgan was quite a small app,
It still
but
is.
so is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I can't say the numbers behind the scenes, but it is very small in comparison. I mean, even when you look at Twitter, I think Cron, because it's associated with Notion, Cron's got like 65, 70K followers, and Cron's associated with Notion.
yeah.
Morgan, not yet, is associated with any note-taking app, but I've been pushing Obsidian for like 6 months. And I think it makes more sense for Morgan to work with Obsidian because Obsidian is local based and Morgan is also local based. Cron is browser based. Like Cron, there is a browser calendar app, and a lot of people want a Morgan browser app, but I I personally don't see a use for the browser app for Morgan.
No, because it's local, because it's across platforms.
Yeah. Most people want the browser app. I've seen in the Discord, the arguments are that some people can't download Morgan onto their work computers
Ah.
because like privacy, security, etc., etc. Which I think Morgan are not necessarily fighting against, but doing things about when it comes to security. I know they're very, very, very high up. Like security is very, very, very high up on their priority list. They want to avoid any issues with that. And I know they're going through all of the security certification stuff when I spoke with David on the CEO interview conversation that we had. So yeah, I know privacy is something that they are concerned about. I mean, one of their biggest user bases is Linux. So I say biggest user base. So obviously they still have more Windows and Mac users because there's more of those people around. But when you compare other calendar apps to Morgan, Linux is a big user base, which is understandable because it actually works with other things, cron. So, but yeah, I mean, it's command menu. Oh, they've used the same one, Control K. Interesting. I didn't even know
Yeah,
that.
that's the kind of industry standard now.
I have noticed that the what? I just saw hide content calendar on the cron list, but I don't have a content calendar. I'm like, what are you even doing? It's got loads of things, but the onboarding of cron is really hard to get my head around. I've onboarded a couple of people into Morgan, and they just got it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in here, and I'm like, I don't get it. I'm happy to click so many buttons to figure out what's going on. I just don't get it. I don't know. Maybe it's me just being dumb. But yeah, what about your privileged illicit access?
I
Not that I'm salty at all.
no. So I recently got access to Illicit's kind of new feature, which I think I can talk about it. If not, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. So
Well,
I'm probably
they haven't said you can't talk about it.
yeah, sorry.
Well, unless it's in the email that I didn't get. Illicit, if you're listening. And Maggie Appleton, I think she's part of the team. Like, if you're listening,
you're also like no, I am upset.
I'm gonna call you all out. I'm gonna be a child, an adult
Yeah,
child.
so I am super happy with what it looks like. What I'm just doing now is running the exact same prompt that Illicit has in ChatGPT with browsing activated, and I want to see the differences.
You can share your screen if you would
I
like.
can, but I don't want to. Yes, so this is what it looks like when you've done the search. So it will provide you with it lists things, it creates a list. So let's do a new query. So I want a list of, and then you put in what information you want to extract. So Danny.
I want a list of. Why did you just tell me this now? I want a list of papers about metastable attenuation. Yep. I'm going all the way out there because I have.
Oh, did I spell it right?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. So for those unfamiliar, metastable attenuation is essentially attuning someone's focus. And the metastability is whether the bifurcation, so the changes inside of the attention, changes, like how that changes inside of their perception of the environment.
The way that you're using this is how it kind of works now in the traditional Illicit.
Right.
So
okay.
You find the papers.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I have in my head.
Yeah. So this is the kind of, I'm not sure how well this is going to work. This is going to be interesting. But I think the idea behind this is to take it kind of up a step so that you're more like, I want a list of paper. I want a list of the key features of metastable attenuation, for example.
Okay.
It goes from a solution focused versus like give me all the papers to make it easier to
I know that
research it.
paper. I know that
I love you.
paper.
Just like I know that one. I know that one. I know that one. I know
Yeah,
that
it's
one.
like
What I do like is that it ranks them as well, which find quite interesting.
yeah, I'm intrigued to see like what it's actually going to come up with because there are lots of different papers. One of the reasons I picked metastable attenuation out my head is because I know it's ecological dynamics, but I know metastable attenuation comes from a heavy mathematical and physics focused background. So I'm curious to see how many like big statistical papers or mathematics papers or anything like that comes up. Optical fibers. Yeah, that's there. That's cool. Um, ooh, yeah, I like some of these points. And it's interesting that it's come up with, of course it's going to come up with the references because it's illicit, duh.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's not finished yet. Now it's finished.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's giving you the concept as well, like authors who introduce the energy approach to metastability from the Alan Kahn. Like it's actually talking about
Yeah.
the
It's
papers and providing something for them a little bit more. That's actually that worked surprisingly well. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't think it would work as well as it did.
yeah, carry on scrolling down. I want to see it. There's a couple of things I have in mind. No, actually scroll down the list.
That's the list.
Oh, that is the list. Okay. Um I'm looking for. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, it's there. The I don't know how you say it. Monomarch 2020 paper.
Mhm.
The what's it? Second one down from what you're seeing. Oh, yeah, I didn't even see that one. I was looking at the other one. Yeah, I was looking there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the paper that I was reading through a couple of weeks ago. Um, so interesting, interesting. Yeah. So when it comes to ChatGPT,
Yep.
can you do anything similar to that?
So this is what I've done here. So I originally wrote, I'd like a this is the prompt that I basically sent to
Illicit.
Elicit.
Yeah.
And this is the responses that I'm getting. Now I'm going to go back and just step backwards. And so it's going to find it again. And this is super alpha. Like this is right at the beginning. Um, there are some differences than what was originally put in there. That's interesting.
Hmm. Yeah. So when it comes to the ChatGPT, obviously you can continue asking questions.
Yes.
I assume you can't do that with Illicit right now.
No. So basically, you ask the question, you get the result, and that's about it.
Okay. The reason I ask is because the loads of people are writing inside my cron inspired thingy on Discord. The reason I ask is I've been using Bing loads. Like when I say loads, I mean it's literally up on my fourth screen as a chat, like a chat bot. Like I'm
You're
writing.
using AI in. I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, okay. I was just gonna say I'm using it as a chat bot while I'm writing.
Yeah, that's because I'm my my perception of you has been very much like you don't like AI. You
No, I
don't
don't.
see, and that's really interesting that you're using it. Why?
I think it's because the writing that I'm doing isn't at the forefront of academics. Because it's for the book, it's very the questions that I have, I could search for, but AI is just a better search. And that's what I'm using it for. So there are things that come to mind, questions that come to mind. I'm like, for example, when I was looking for plots for stories, I was like, okay, how long did it take for some of the biggest novels to be written? And I got Bing to list out some of the popular novels, and then I asked it to like tell me if it could find it, how long it took to write, like the authors to write each novel, how popular each novel was for comparison. And it was doing it within seconds. So I found out all this information really quickly, and I could make a decision while I was writing from the information that I had. So it was kind of like having an expert next to me, which was nice on just internet
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
So instead of me having, I always had a search engine up. Like Bing search was always up, but now it's Bing chat because Bing chat is far easier to find the answers to questions. And I'm also using it. I'm still quite not in the writing stage because I'm outlining a lot of stuff because it's do we want to talk about world building? I feel like that's where I'm like leaning towards. Um yeah, so for those unfamiliar with the well, actually, no one will
No
be
one's
familiar
going to
because
be familiar because only you and I have spoken about this. So maybe give it a bit of context.
yeah. Um, Here's some context. I planned on writing a book about ecological dynamics about 9 months ago, 10 months ago, and I put it in my ideas projects. And I had no idea how I was going to write it. And through the conversations we've had here and conversations I've had behind the scenes with a few creators and writers, I decided, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to write a book, a second book, because the Notion one technically is the first one, but I don't really count it. It's kind of like half a book. Uh, but my problem was, as I alluded to earlier in this episode, is the self-help book stuff just doesn't work for me. I don't like reading the books. I don't like the takeaways from the books. And the books become footnotes in conversations about the thing, the topic, whatever. It's not, unlike fantasy, sci-fi, like made up stuff to an extent. There's no fandom, there's no community really behind the book. It's more of a, oh yeah, this book spoke about this thing that I want to tell you about. It's this footnote reference thing, and that's not what I want because that to me is prescriptive. It's it's okay, here's a list of things that you can do, but in my environment I'm different. So that's what you could do over there, but here is whatever this is. And I was like, how do I write a book? I think I said this in the book writing episode. How do I write a book that's an environment rather than a prescription, like step-by-step solution? And while I was on holiday, I came up with this idea about, okay, ecological dynamics, environment. How do I build an environment where people can learn it in a book? World building. That's where I was like, hold up a minute, like smack myself in the face a couple of times. This already exists. When you think of Harry Potter, the reason I said that is because the first one's in front of me right now. Harry Potter, like J.K. Rowling builds a world of wizards and witches with dementors and all these other magical beings. And Harry goes and learns through this new world. And the world itself is obviously not real, but the world gives constraints and affordances by the things in it. And what I was thinking is like, okay, so that's the world. How do I explain learning through ecological dynamics without explaining learning through ecological dynamics? And what I realized is I don't need to explain it because that is what happens. So I don't need to explicitly say said character learned through ecological dynamics that said robot destroyed one other cyborg. I don't know. I don't need to explain that unless I want ecological dynamics to be part of the story. And if it is, then I can make it something. I can make it, I don't know, a part of magic, a part of tech, a part of a perspective. I can do what I want with it when it comes to the word and the naming because the thing itself is already happening. Like you can look at any book that has any learning involved in it, Harry Potter included, and ecological dynamics is there. You can apply it there. It's a perspective that you look at it. So how do I explain ecological dynamics learning in a book through various environments? Well, I build an environment that has constraints and affordances that I can talk about as constraints and affordances rather than it being this shallow thing of, oh yeah, the constraint is the way that I view this. It's not as tangible. It's not as grab holdy. But if I'm writing in a fantasy sci-fi world, I can use magic or tech as a constraint, as affordances, and then the person that's learning through things can use the language of ecological psychology. They can say, I felt constrained by, I saw the affordance of. So I can use the language of ecological psychology in an environment that's built out specifically to show, emerge what I want to show, what I want to tell, what I want to say. So it is very like ED Inception. I'm creating an environment to show ED.
The environment.
Yeah. To show ED through the words of ED. So in my head, I can do all, I mean, that is dynamical systems. In a nutshell, you have a system inside a system inside a system. But that's how I'm writing this book about ecological dynamics. It's a story that people can get hold of. They can get hold of characters. They can get hold of a plot. They can get hold of settings. And even though it's one book, it could be more because there are different ways to perceive the world. There are loads of different things. Applying ED into politics, into philosophy, into psychology, into learning, into sport, into anything, there's a different story there. There's a different plot line there. So instead of it being a self-help book, it will be a world of ED, a perspective of ED. And that's how I have it in my head. How I pitched this book, no idea. I'm working on that. But with the going all the way back to where we started, with my writing with AI, the coming up with the characters and the plots and the settings and stuff, that isn't in academia. That isn't high in academia. So I can ask AI about that. But so this actually relates to a Brandon Sanderson lecture that I was listening to yesterday. He said that plots is like the iceberg analogy, with all the background and stuff. You have the tip of the iceberg outside of the water and then the iceberg in the water. But Brandon Sanderson was saying that in the iceberg, actually it's hollow. Because most of the research and the actual understanding behind the stuff that people talk about, the writers don't need to know. The writers just need to show the reader that they know enough. You're kind of like putting the reader into a false sense of security. Oh yeah, the author's done all this background research. In actual fact, they haven't. They've just done enough to make themselves know enough about explaining the thing, but really they don't know how it works, which is one of the issues scientists have with sci-fi, because scientists are like, no, that wouldn't work because of this, this, and this, and this. And the sci-fi writers are like, yeah, but I don't care because it sort of works. It works well enough. Whereas me, I have that iceberg because I'm in the research. So AI isn't needed for the middle of the iceberg. It's needed for the top of the iceberg that's showing. And that's where I'm at now. Hopefully that explains what's going on.
Yeah, that's quite fascinating, actually. Yeah. My brain is instantly going. So in a couple of weeks' time, I am running a D&D session for complete and utter beginners.
Oh, yeah.
And my brain's like, how would I use an ED perspective in a world to teach them how to play D&D? And I'm just like, that is a fascinating idea.
But it's nothing new, because
it's not.
It's
That's
teaching
the thing.
a skill through constraints, and that's the constraints-led approach. And that's why I'm like, it's so hard to not see ecological things inside of everyday life. Like, it's sorry to use the analogy again, but once you've taken the red pill, it's hard not to see it.
Yes.
And when I look back, I'm like, yeah, but no. Whenever I look back at it from a traditional perspective, I'm like, yeah, but this, or yeah, but that. And how do you do this? Oh, processing, what's that? Oh, something to do with Bayesian statistics. I don't really know. Yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah. So my brain's just like, I wonder, how would I play with that in a D&D session teaching people? Well, obviously there's constraints that I would add. What constraints would I choose to add? Could those constraints... Yeah. So my brain's just like, ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, that is good, especially with the way D&D is, because D&D is so open, because that's kind of the point, imagination. It's so open that I think, like every sport is open. You can really use it in so many different ways that it comes down to the expertise of the coach, how it's applied. And this is where I want the conversations to go. Like, in my head, when I see 5 years down the line, if I actually have this book done, I see a community of like ED practitioners, not just in sport,
Yeah.
applying it.
I want to see I want to see practitioners outside of sport more. Like, because that's going to be so amazing if we find it once they must be there.
Oh, yeah. The thing is, they are there because people are taking it's physical related. Like you got the physiotherapists that are taking an ED approach, the strength and conditioning coaches taking an ED approach, the psychologists, sports psychologists taking an ED approach to treating things. And there are other people that are doing it, but they don't know they're doing it because they don't have the words for it. Um, and because they don't have the words for it, sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. And this is where the practitioner and the theorist sort of need to come together. There was a lecture on this in my third year of uni where the theorist knows the words, knows how to explain it, but the practitioner knows what it looks like. And you just need them to talk sometimes. I'm certainly in the theorist camp because I don't practice inside of coaching. I don't coach, and I don't want to coach because to me, it's far more exciting to look at the research.
I
But
coach.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's exciting, and I think combining Elicit, being AI, and Obsidian, the writing of this book is going to be amazing. The only problem I have with writing the book, uh, I wouldn't even class as a problem, is obviously it's going to take time. So I need to reprioritize, which I was in the process of doing before Cron decided to pop up. But yeah, I think that covers most of what we were going to talk about. The other thing is going to be a longer conversation, so maybe we'll talk about that one for next week.
It's the longer conversation.
Dr. K and his explanation of the month, the mental health month.
Cool. I will
So,
make sure to watch that for next week.
sounds good.
See you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.